My name is Elizabeth West, and I want to welcome you to the Worship Leader Toolbox podcast, where our mission is to equip and encourage worship leaders and teams and practical components of local church worship. We're so thrilled to have you listening to our podcast, and our prayer is that it will be helpful to you and your teams. If you have any thoughts or questions, feel free to reach out to us at worshipleadertoolbox.com. We'd also be honored if you would subscribe and share it with others. Heading now to today's episode.
Hey, welcome to another episode of Worship Leader Toolbox Podcast. We're so thankful to have you with us. I know we say that a lot, but we truly are thankful for the many people who listen and who engage and who are on our mailing list and read the blog posts. If you want to get connected, there's a few ways. You can hit subscribe wherever you're listening. You can go to worshipleadertoolbox.com, sign up for our newsletter, or you can just send us a note through social media. It's Worship Leader Toolbox Podcast or Worship Leader Toolbox, and on Instagram and Twitter, it's Worship Leader TB. I want to talk today quickly about the small improvements that over time will stack up to amazing results in your ministry. A lot of times we have big visions, we have big dreams, we see photos on the internet, we attend a conference, we go to another church, we hear from a friend, and we think if we could just do this big thing, everything would really be rocking and rolling in our worship ministry. And there are times when a church gets a worship ministry complete overhaul, but those are really few and far between when a whole stage is added on to a building or a whole new sound and video system is installed. Most often, the improvements are going to be incremental. And when you embrace that and understand that, you can use it to your advantage. Each small step will snowball. And if you think about a small step of improvement each week, that's 52 little things that you could do. And at the end of this year, your ministry will be better. And overall, things will be humming in a stronger way. You will see amazing results. Now, as a bonus, if you really want to see exponential growth, not only will you have to make 52 little improvements this year, but you're going to have to empower your team members with authority as well as inspiration and vision to make baby step improvements each week. That will really stack up to be amazing, amazing things by the end of the year. So what areas can a worship leader improve? What is an example of a small weekly improvement? For just a few minutes on this short Worship Leader Toolbox podcast, I want just to rattle off some ideas to get you thinking. And I know that different sized churches would have maybe different small improvements, and based on your context or your setting, if you're in a church of 50 or 60 people with a small instrumental group, then some of these little things that you will do will really shine. The percentage of what each small improvement is in the overall picture could really, make a major difference. If you're in a church with many more people and have several people involved in your ministry and a lot of production and a lot of stuff each week, then maybe a tiny little improvement may not, seem like it makes that much difference, but it still does. And so I just want to roll through these. You can find this blog post and this list at worshipleadertoolbox.com, and would love to have you be inspired and be encouraged that little incremental steps can make a major difference down the road. Too often, people think that they can accomplish too much in 2 weeks, and they don't think about how much they can accomplish in an entire calendar year. So let me just run through these real quick, just a quick brainstorm list. 1, you can think about the placement of your mics and music stands for the best view of the congregation and the cameras. 2, you can spruce up the presentation of your worship music space. It might be as simple as just getting rid of the coffee cup from last week, or moving things around a little bit, or changing it this week. So when people walk in, they're kind of like, oh, wow, something new. Number 3, make a new wireless purchase for your instrument or voice. I know some of these things require some money in the budget, but usually when you have a vision for something new, money will follow it. And so you need to have a vision of what you would spend money on if you had it. And often, as a result of that vision, then the resources will come. Another one is maintain the equipment you have and plan for incremental replacement. This might not be easy for a 1-week fix, but maybe on 1 week you could delegate a project to somebody in your team or in your church to take a look at the age of each piece of equipment and get an idea for when we're going to need to replace it and how much it would cost. And that one proactive step with your church finance team is going to really make it seem like you are ahead of the game. Another one is have an equipment inventory and organization day. I wrote this one down because we need to do this in our church. We have several little graveyards of things, a little box of drum parts, a couple old keyboards, handful of wedge monitors left over from a different era, and we are in need of an equipment organization day. All it takes is 1 week and a date set on a calendar and an invitation to a group, and to take probably 2 hours on a Saturday morning or a Sunday afternoon to get that accomplished. And that's one of the things that I need to put on my list for sure. I'll read through the rest of these. Install a confidence monitor in the back for your team. Many churches have this projector or TV screen for their worship team. Makes a world of difference for vocalists and for others who don't need to see guitar chords, or for those who have it memorized. And it makes a big difference in how people engage with eye contact to the congregation. Purchase a new chair for the audio-visual team. We recently did this in the last year. Just one day, got on Amazon, found a couple good chairs, and purchased them, delivered, put them together. And it is surprising how long or how much of an impact that will make, how long that small purchase will go in terms of a nicer look, but also a worship and tech team realizes, hey, they notice us. We're back here kind of behind the scenes, but we're important, and we got new chairs. Another one is to purchase some new drumsticks or guitar strings, kind of along the same lines. We did this a few years back and just had a bunch of supplies sitting back in the cabinet by the worship team stuff for anyone's use, and just as an encouragement to the people. Here's one that I could definitely take myself up on as well. Fix one messed up chord chart. It never fails that there's always the chord chart left over from a long time ago, or something that you changed and never did actually get to the computer to change. And you pull it up on Planning Center, you stick it in for the Sunday, and the same wrong ending chord is still there from 3 months ago when you sang this song. And so one thing you could do to help your ministry and to kind of put into your mind that, yes, you are a chord chart person, you're a disciplined person, and you make sure that things are right. Just doing one will almost kind of lead you into doing all of them for that week. And so fix one messed up chord chart. That's one little improvement you could do this week. Another one is to document a process or a system and share it with your team. Is there a system for accomplishing something, for getting something done, for choosing songs or setting up for worship practice or sound checks or whatever the system needs to be? Or maybe it's something that's already happening and working well, and you document it for the sake of including new people eventually. Maybe that's where you could start, the documentation of how a new person becomes part of your ministry team. And when you have that documented, it's more clear in your mind, it forces you to be clear on paper, and it makes it available to other people to actually have a chance to get involved. Speaking of getting involved, another improvement you can make in your ministry is to invite a new person to join you. Just in conversations, find out if somebody's musical and invite them to be a part of your ministry. You might be surprised who you uncover with this vision and this action step. Another possible thing that you can do to increase and move your effectiveness forward in ministry leadership is to memorize an opening song 1 week. I know some churches memorize their music. Other churches rely on notebooks or iPads or chord charts or whatever it is that you do for your weekly service. But what if the area you're going to improve this week is to memorize at least the first song that you're singing, so that you're able to fully engage and make eye contact and be free and loose to worship. Meet with a key stakeholder in your ministry team. Just take 1 week to meet with somebody who is really an anchor for you, and encourage them, invite them to share their ideas, talk a little bit about successes and past celebrations, kind of remember when they got involved and how, and just buy them lunch or breakfast and say thank you. Here's another one. Spruce up your planning systems. After the pandemic era, it seems like a lot of the flow in a lot of areas of life kind of seemed to take a back seat. And one of those was the weekly rhythm of meeting with your pastor or music leadership worship team. And so if you can spruce that up, if you can just determine that at the very least, we're going to talk on the phone for a few minutes each Wednesday to talk about, 2 Sundays from now, or whatever your rhythm is, or maybe it's monthly or whatever. Put that into place. And that is probably going to last you for a year. If you say we're going to meet the first Monday of the month, that's probably going to last for quite a while before you might need to spruce it up again. Create a time slot to receive and welcome feedback from your pastor. This is another major one and can kind of fit along with the planning meeting time, but be open and purposeful in inviting feedback from your pastor. The worship leader is an assistant for the congregation, and Jesus is the ultimate worship leader, but the pastor is the leader of the church. And as worship leaders, we need to support and encourage the leaders in our church. What are you seeing in us? And how are we working together? Just all the different ways that you can invite feedback. That is going to help grow your ministry. Here's a simple practical one. You can do this for, $100 or less if you want, or you can spend a lot more, but buy a new microphone. And if you have some money in the budget, buy 3 new microphones. Do some research, upgrade what you have a little bit. You'll be surprised how much just moving up the notch on microphones will help bring some clarity to vocals in your worship ministry. Learn a new song. Of course, this is obvious. We always want to be reaching for new music and new ways of expression and new ways of worshiping the Lord. But sometimes it's easy just to pick out the old stuff. And so take 1 week to say, I'm going to have this new song down and in, and we're going to get the chords ready, and we're going to do this song. And that's going to help provide momentum for moving forward. Take a musical instrument lesson. Whether you've been playing forever or you're just learning or whatever the level you're at, just get together with somebody for a lesson. And maybe you have to do like 2 or 3 at a music store in order for it to really count. But just taking time to learn something new. If you're like me, I pick up my guitar before rehearsal with the worship band. I put my strap on, I grab the capo, I get my in-ears ready, everything is going, and all of a sudden I find myself playing my same little pirate tune sounding riff that I do every single time. It's important, I guess, to have a groove, because then you can tell when you're in tune and out of tune and warm up a little bit and all that. But most often over the years, I've noticed I have that little groove for about 6 or 7 years, and then it kind of slowly begins to change into something else, and I play that every time I pick up my guitar for another half a decade. And I think when you sit down with somebody else and learn one new thing, that can change that groove that you get stuck into just by nature. Here's another idea, and that is to have someone take some pro photos of your team some Sunday. This doesn't have to be, a paid thing unless you want it to be. Somebody in your church is a great photographer. Find that person, have them bring their camera and their equipment, have them come a little early during your rehearsal and just take some photos, close-ups right up there by you, and maybe take a few of leading worship that day and, the congregation, some from the back, just whatever you can do to have those photos, and then to be able to share them around on social media with your team, to post to somebody's wall and to say thank you, or to share them on the church's website, or wherever you're able to gain some energy and some excitement, some enthusiasm for the fact that each week this team leads worship in the church, and we're so thankful to be a part of the community here. Here's another idea, and this is basically a plug, but listen to the Worship Leader Toolbox podcast this week. You can take just a few minutes to listen to a 15 or 20-minute podcast and get ideas and get thoughts and kind of just stay in the loop on what people are thinking about out there in worship ministry. And it's not just our podcast, it's a whole slew of great podcasts from all different types of leaders and sizes of churches, and focuses on how you're going to be a worship leader. Attend a worship ministry conference this year. You take 2 or 3 days out of your entire 365, you attend a conference, and it's amazing, the ideas, the new songs, the inspiration, the kind of getting back in touch with God's call on your life, and diving into Scripture, and all the things that a 2 or 3 day conference will do in your life and ministry. And that has a major impact for the year down the road. Write down your goals for the next 2 years. When you get out a piece of paper and write down goals, it definitely begins to shape your direction. When it's written down, you kind of subconsciously begin to shoot for that. You start trying to get there. And if you really want your ministry to grow, you as the leader are going to have to think about what you want the ministry to look like in 2 years. I know a lot of people talk about 5 and 10 year goals, but these days it seems like just thinking about 24 months from now. How do you want your people to be? How do you want your congregation to be? How do you want the songs to be? How do you want the flow to be? How do you want your schedule in life to be? If it feels like you're stressed to the max and all over the place and barely pulling it together each week, one of your goals needs to be to become more disciplined in a system for choosing songs, scheduling people, and being ready for game day each week. And when you get ahead on that, it is so much better than whenever you get behind on that. We all know it, but often it's hard to get out of the rhythm. One of the ways is to write down goals for the next 2 years. How do you want your worship ministry to be? The last 2 ideas here, one is rework your rehearsal flow for maximum efficiency. It is so easy to get into a rut and stay there. And I heard somebody say once, and I've said it before, there's a fine line between a groove and a rut. When you're in a groove, things are working well, everybody's excited, but when you get into a rut, it becomes stale, things just don't work as well. So if you've gotten into a rut in your worship ministry rehearsal time, change it up a little bit, become more efficient. Assign some new roles. Maybe somebody needs to get there early to prep things, or somebody needs to join you at the beginning to pray with you, or something that can kind of like change it up a little bit. But for sure, to be as efficient as possible. You still want to build community and talk to your people and have fun, in between songs. You don't want to just, all work, no play. It's a volunteer team, and we want that community as we serve together. But people also want to know what's expected. And so if you're going to rehearse from 7 to 8:15, then you want to do your best to start around 7 and end by 8:15. People are expecting that. And you can build a lot of trust and confidence, and you can go a long time when you hold to what you say. And the last one is to meet with your team each Sunday and spend 5 or 10 minutes talking through scripture, leadership lessons, anything like that. And that is like maybe seemingly a burden because you're supposed to do it every week or as often as possible. This often happens naturally. Most often praise bands will stand in a circle. Worship teams will be in the back waiting for worship to start. There's all kinds of ample time to talk and to visit. And what if this week, when you talked and visit, you pointed it toward a specific discussion, towards something that as a group we need to work on, we need to change, something that we need to do as a team, a vision or an inspiration or a direction that we want to set. A few years back, we created some worship, culture, and conversation cards. We just did this for our own ministry, but basically they're just, 6 or 8 cards on a page. You print them, you cut them, and on that, and we used cardstock paper, so it'd feel like a little baseball card, and that's about the size of this thing. But we would hand it out to everybody in the circle. And before church, that 30-minute lull where you've spent a few minutes praying together, and now you're just going to talk a little bit. And we would hand out those cards that had a scripture and a quote and a couple questions. And we would just let people read them, and we talked about it. And I remember one of those quotes said, "Connecting always requires energy." And so as a worship team, we were able to talk there about the fact that as a team, we need to be sure that we are the thermostats, not the thermometers. We are going to have to exude some energy even when the congregation is just sort of barely coming along with us. And as we do that, and as we lead and call and pull people along, then they'll jump in and they'll start to engage based on our modeling and our setting the temperature. And so that was just one example of a quick little circle meeting. We were already there anyway, and it made a big difference. Well, you will be amazed what can happen in a year when you do one little improvement each week. Don't think about all you got to do this year. Just think about this week. What is one thing you can do this week? You can go and make sure the cords are straight in the worship area. You can make sure there's no coffee cups around, and you can make sure the chord charts are correct. You do that one little thing this week, and it'll make a big impact as it snowballs along until this time next year. Well, we're praying for you. Hope these ideas are helpful, and we're thankful that you are serving in ministry wherever you are at. And if you have any questions or any thoughts or would like just to visit and talk about your ministry, be sure to reach out to us. My name's Tim Price, and I am thankful to not only have the opportunity to lead worship at our church most every week, but also to serve in a wide circle of other worship leaders and ministry teams all around the Midwest. And look forward to connecting with you at some point. Thanks so much. Have an awesome day, and we'll talk to you later.